Hello again. Um, Interesting developments since the last time I shared a thought with y'all. Um, Again, my name is Enrique Gonzalez. I have some experience in education. Began talking about personalization last time that I did one of these pieces. And so, ironically, Oklahoma, West Virginia, I believe Texas, several states are arguing about teacher pay. People want an increase in salary. That's natural. I mean, that's something that I think of all of the professions that exist in this world, the fact that teachers' pay is far below, say, professional athletes is astounding in this world that we live in, but it is what it is. So my conversation would be about this personalization again, relative to not just a pay raise, but what we're doing. In a quick snippet of what I mean in that regard, I would say to those that might consider this, how do you create a pay raise that is equal to what really the value of society should be on education? I think that comes from the teachers themselves. It comes from the performance and the endearing spirit of that teacher that you can remember when you were a child. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teachers you may remember that had that impact on your life. And therefore, society, people in general, or specifically that individual that thinks of that teacher, would hold that teacher in such regard that they'd always carry that in their heart and their memories. What easier way to get the increased salary for teachers in America than to create a society of thinking citizens that would value that education they received along the road? Well, in order to do that, personalization is number one. So let's talk a little bit about the beginnings of it. In a classroom setting, typically kids walk in, they sit down, socialize, teacher calls to order, begins either a verbal roll call or a physical through her sight, his sight, vision of who's in the classroom, and monitors and writes the attendance, and it goes back to the office or wherever central attendance accounting takes place. With that in mind, okay, think about what schools prioritize nowadays. A tardy policy, a behavioral policy, okay? Scores on exams that, quite frankly, I don't see eye to eye with. We've been chasing scores for how long? It's almost like we keep hitting the nail with the hammer on its head, but we keep missing and missing and hitting our thumb and hitting our finger and hitting our palm or hitting whatever, even the table, without striking the nail. Well, doesn't it seem, at least to me it does seem, that we need to do something about how to personalize? So how do you do that in a classroom? Well, I would adhere to the philosophy that every school, middle school and high school in this country, should consider what many organizations have done, in particular Big Picture, to create an advisory setting whereby students meet for 1 hour or extended period of time to discuss subjects that are relative to their heart, to their concerns, to what they think about. In that environment, you begin to find out who the students are by their responses. I'll give you a simple practice exercise. A circle of students with a teacher, and everybody takes a turn saying what animal they'd like to resemble, like eagle, bear, tiger, whatever, snake. And then the kid explains why they see themselves in that way. It's a pretty good start. Well, you can take that and expand on that. So as you begin the advisory with subjects or ideas or thoughts that would create an interest in the students, they begin to realize, you know what, we can talk there freely. Maybe not at home, maybe not in another classroom, but at this advisory period, we can't talk. And that, my friends, is when you really, really get to know who the kids are. And they gain an appreciation of who you are and what you hold for them in terms of their future in education. From there, you can begin the subject matter, whatever it may be. We all know that middle schools and secondary schools are all by period, several teachers in the day. But it would always refer back to that first period class where they could discuss homework assignments eventually in terms of developing ideas, plans, projects, if you will. And I'm sure some of you are thinking project-based learning, right? Okay. And what are you trying to achieve? Interest in the subject matter. Well, Again, by personalizing the instruction that way, you can begin to get the students to really grasp what you're trying to get across, and most importantly, to appreciate and value what you've done. Now, the schools that I was involved with, we used a document called a personal history book. If you want to know about that, let me know. I can get a copy to you easily, electronic or otherwise. And it's a project, takes about a month, where the student develops their history, where they came from, everything from the country, the origin, the mapping, etc., to ancestry, to a family tree, to who I am, to several projects within it. When they finish doing that personal history book, they receive academic credit, whatever way you want to do that academic credit. And in that regard, okay, they would be able to grasp who they are, but most importantly, and here's a really beautiful piece, the instructor, the teacher, the guide on the side would realize who's in front of them. You might say, I can't possibly remember 35 kids in a classroom. Yes, you can, particularly if you know something about them. And you can find the buttons with which to excite them about the subject matter. Point in fact, an advisory that took place some time ago. Young man hated mathematics, wanted nothing to do with it. So he developed a project about how to change the brakes for his father in their own home. Only to find out that he had to figure out the calibration for the brakes, and therefore there was mathematics embedded in the project. So he had to go back to the math teacher that he struggled with and say, teacher, I won't use names, can you help me understand this mathematical problem? Sure enough, kid learned the process, changed the dad's brakes, was ecstatic because the parents gave him immediate feedback. Not just did you save us money, but look how smart you are. That's how you personalize it. And that kid never had a problem with mathematics from pre-algebra to algebra to trig and so on and so forth till he graduated. Success story. There are a myriad of them available in this world. If you look at what's going on, we're missing the point because we don't listen to who's in front of us. We want to deposit instruction into them like there's some kind of a receptacle. It doesn't work that way. It has to be both ways. And that student has to gain an understanding of who you are and what you're trying to do through the project that you do, the advisory period when you discuss these things, and most importantly, where the rubber meets the road, when the instructional matter that you are trying to get across to these young people has a relevance to them, that they can say, I understand that. I know where that comes from. So that process, the advisory, and in our case, the personal history book, could be used in any learning environment. It will take an administration that is willing to take the focus off of the academic examinations to be approved by the state, or back when I was doing it with No Child, No Cholo Left Behind, and I'm sure now with ESSA, and not worry about the scores, because what ends up happening when you personalize instruction, those kids run through the roof. The academic scores skyrocket because they're taking an interest in an examination that they never cared about before, because they respect the fact that you are trying to embed in them a love of learning. Consider that as you move forward. Try to personalize that instruction so that young boy or girl can gain what the Greeks long ago had, a love of learning. If you think about those early schools, there might have been 5, 6 students per class. They lived with the teacher. They ate, broke bread, discussed, and they began to learn the knowledge. Just think about your ancestry. Maybe you had an uncle, a father, a mother, a grandfather, a grandmother who had an impact on you because you knew they cared about who you were and what you were offering to them. It's time that America changes the instructional process. It hasn't changed probably in 200 years. So we can continue to butt our heads and talk about pay raises and about the performance of schools and completely ignore the most dynamic piece of all, the students that are placed in your hands. Consider that till we meet again. Thank you once again for sharing some thoughts with me and allowing me to share some thoughts with you.